Welcome back to Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. My name is Joel Goldberg. I say welcome back because I've done one show per day, Monday through Friday, on this platform since late March. But today, just the way things sort of worked out was I had the opportunity to have three different guests, and they all sort of fit into a theme of giving back and gratitude and all a little bit different too. So this morning I had on John Rulin. You could see that wherever you're watching this now, Facebook, YouTube. Go back to Twitter and see that conversation. He makes his living with meaningful gifts for corporations, memorable experiences. So that was really cool. My guest at 2 is Nicky Lopez, the young second baseman for the Kansas City Royals. First Royals guest I've had on the show. Who would have thought 70-something episodes in as a Royals guy that'll be my first guest. Nicky is, an emerging player with the Royals, young guy that everywhere he has gone, he has always given back to his community. And so I wanted to talk to him about what's coming up here with the Royals, but also what he's been able to do to help charitably. But I have to say that my guest today is one that I have had in mind here for a few weeks now, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I do want to thank my friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust, #NoStoppingYou, because they reached out to me. I mean, first off, I'm thankful for the partnership. But the president of the bank last week said to me, hey, I just want to let you know that these conversations that you're having about race, we're really proud that you're doing it. And quite frankly, if I had a sponsor come to me and say, yeah, we don't want you to talk about that, the beauty of me having this show and not having to answer to a boss is that I can make these decisions. So if they had said, yeah, we don't want you to do that, we probably would have parted ways, and I wouldn't have talked a whole lot about that, I don't think. Maybe I would have. But when they said to me, hey, we're proud that you're having discussions about race, it just gave me more fire and fuel to say, you know what? It's nice to have that support. And just real quick, I want to thank Casey Cattle Company. They've had a campaign with me the last few months. We're going to wrap that up today and maybe reconvene again. But these guys are veterans that have served our country. They're up in Western Missouri. Wagyu beef, ground beef steaks, bacon cheeseburger, bratwursts. You name it. And they're taking orders for 4th of July, delivered to all 50 states. So please support them. They're awesome, awesome dudes. And JJ's Wine and Spirits over in Overland Park, newer sponsor for me, southwest corner of College and Antioch. Now, as for my intro, I just had a chance to meet my guest for the first time in the last 10 minutes. And the way we meet people in this day and age, which is virtually. And I hope and look forward to at some point meeting him in person. But I need to back up here a little bit. I'm making him wait, so I apologize, Pastor, for the delay on this one. But this show has given me a voice in this community, and I hope beyond, to talk about whatever's going on. And I don't know that it was always safe to talk about race. And if it wasn't, shame on me for not doing that. But my life, or I should say my perspective, changed when the George Floyd murder happened. And quite frankly, and if you're white, if it changed and you were affected by it, that's the way it should have been. If you weren't, I'm not sure what it's going to take. But we saw things that day on camera that have been going on for generations, but we finally saw it happen in front of our eyes. That so many of us maybe heard about, but didn't experience it. So we all experienced it in our communities, in the country, and around the world. I was shaken by it, and started over time reaching out to many of my black friends in that awkward, uncomfortable, what do I say? What do I ask? How can we talk about this more? And then I met a woman by the name of Kiana Sinks during all of this. One of the beauties of this pandemic is the people I've met. And Kiana's a young activist, 25 years old. She's been on this show. And I said to her one night, I said, this is going to sound like a strange request, but how does the Jewish guy find a way to get to a Sunday service at church, at a black church? I want to experience, I want to feel. And she said, well, and it's obviously a pandemic right now, let me send you this video. So she sent me this video. It was a 2-part series by a pastor that I hadn't met before, and I sat in bed just transfixed by it. I mean, I pulled out my phone and I was taking notes. And I told the pastor that I cut a little video together just to show different friends, because it was hands down the most informative discussion on race that I have heard. And I'm not buttering him up right now because I just told him all this before we went on. That's probably the longest introduction that I've had for a guest. But I bring in now Pastor AD3, who full name I believe is Armour D. Stevenson III. I don't know if anybody calls you that. They call you Pastor AD3, right?
That's right, man. It's kind of a long name to remember, so I just shortened it with AD3. So it's Pastor AD3, AD3. Yep, that's what
Yeah.
I go by.
Yeah, I love it. And so, I told you all this in the 10 minutes that we had before we went on, just to kind of give you a feel for where I was coming from. Because here you do this 2-part series. And I think, for one, the powerful thing was, we'll see pastors and preachers and priests and rabbis and get together at, different events.
Right.
But this was like, white evangelical, black pastor, putting on a clinic for their members.
Right.
That it was like, and he did a beautiful job of asking you all these questions. And I told you, I was always raised to love everyone. That's accurate. But I never saw things as much as I should have. It was the George Floyd murder that opened my eyes, and it was your conversation that was hands down the most informative that I've heard, and I've been obsessed over watching everything. So I'm talking too much, which anyone that knows me knows that's normal. But I want to ask you right now, and then we'll get into this, and we'll see where it goes. What's your take on everything that's going on right now? Because I feel like the world is awoken, yet you open up the news every morning, and there's still something else going on.
Right. Right. First, let me say, hey, I greatly appreciate you inviting me on. It's great to begin to build this relationship with you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're definitely in a unique season in our country. Historically, issues surrounding race and ethnicity and oppression and racism have emerged in America, but I feel like we're in a time in a season where things are coming to a head, and I feel as if the consciousness of America has been stirred once again, and it's being awakened once again. And I say once again because I think that was Dr. Martin Luther King's aim, especially if you watch the whole Selma thing and how that unfolded, how he was criticized for wanting media there and wanting cameras there, but he understood that if it wasn't seen by Americans all over, it wouldn't be believed or it would be dismissed. So I think with the George Floyd situation, I think that things had just come to a head, and the consciousness of America has been stirred to the point that it is invoking and provoking action like never before. And as difficult as this season is, the difficulty of this season is extremely necessary. I think that if we're going to navigate this season, and if we're going to fight against racism, if we're going to fight against bigotry and oppression and all of that, then we're going to have to fight against it and rebel against it and press against it together. And so I think as difficult as this season is, it's also going to be a beneficial one in the fight for equality and against racism.
There's, to me, I think one of the challenges among many, and who am I to talk about challenges when I'm I'm understanding this at a level that I didn't understand in the first 47 years of my life.
Right.
I understood a lot. I didn't understand anywhere near enough. We don't need this to be a whole Joel confesses to Pastor AD3 right now, but I'm trying to, I mean, we can, but I'm trying to just give you my perspective, because I think that my perspective is one that a lot of people can relate to.
Right.
And in order for us to get better, we need to learn. We need to keep asking these questions. That's common sense. And so, for me, I never understood what white privilege meant. I thought that I was privileged growing up in a middle class household because we had a roof over our head. My parents worked hard. We had a lot of friends that were a lot wealthier, and some that were a little bit less, but a lot of my friends where I grew up were a lot wealthier. And so I had an understanding that, be grateful for what you have. And I felt like that was privilege. I didn't understand, when you talk about the talk, the talk is not about driving and police. The talk is about the birds and the bees. We didn't have the talk that everyone knows. So I've come to understand at a deeper level what white privilege means, and I thought you did such a beautiful job in that series explaining how so many blacks have to always explain.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that, because I haven't had to justify a whole lot in my life.
Right. Right. So what I said I think white the term white privilege is triggering to white people because it sounds demeaning. It sounds as if I or anyone who uses it is dismissing someone's journey, or dismissing someone's struggle, or dismissing someone's blood, sweat, tears, and hard work. But that's not what white privilege is referring to. White privilege is not referring to the fact that you may not have worked for where you are, or you may not have worked for what you have, or you may not have strived, or you may not have been through anything. What white privilege is referring to is this toolbox of benefits, this toolbox of tools, or this backpack of resources that you have simply because you're not black, simply because you're white. On the flip side, black people don't operate in the realm of white privilege. And in that interview, I started to explain, like, white people don't have to think about explaining themselves. So, for instance, historically, black people have had to explain, why are you in this neighborhood? Why are you driving this car? Why do you have what you have? Why do you live where you live? Why are you walking here? Why, Ahmaud Arbery, why are you jogging in this neighborhood? Why are you looking at these houses under construction? Why? And so my white brothers and sisters have not had to live with the looming question of why. You've never had to ask yourself the question why. You've never had to delve into your conscience. You never had to delve into yourself and ask why. You've never had to give yourself a prep conversation as to when you'd be confronted about something, what you'd say. W.E.B. Du Bois, who is a famous historic African-American writer, he coined it as black people having to have a double consciousness. What he said is black people can be American, but we also have to remember we're black. So we live in two worlds. We live with two sets of rules. And so I've had to sit my sons down and explain to them how to maneuver in two worlds. My white friends don't have to do that. They live in one world, and that one world has historically been theirs. And so I've had to teach my sons how to operate in America under the rules of America, but also have to operate in America under the rules of America while being black, being American while being black. And so the frame white privilege just gives terminology to that truth, that you don't have to think about certain things that I have to think about. You don't have to worry and wonder about certain things that I have to think about. On the flip side, you also don't have to wonder about the color of your skin being a barrier in getting to where you need to go. For instance, I've sat down with black people in my congregation, black women specifically in my congregation, who are afraid, watch this, Joel, to even put their names on a job application because of the ethnicity of their name.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
my white sisters don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's what I mean when I say white privilege. Hairstyles. You know what I'm saying? Like, just different things like that that are that my black brothers and sisters are looked at as less than, inferior, or troublemakers or rabble rousers because they're being their authentic selves.
Yeah, that label of thugs. How come nobody ever calls a white person a thug? Right?
Right, right. It just comes with the territory, I guess, in America.
You know, and even something as simple as the hair discussion is, I saw, and I don't know I don't know everybody in the media here in town. I've been here 12 years, but I've gotten to know some of the news folks. But my world is Royals and sports, and and in the business community now. But and I saw that there was a local reporter a couple of weeks ago, African American woman who I think basically said something like, she's always had to do her hair in a certain style to sort of fit what was expected on TV, or sort of, I guess that would be like white expectations. But yet, she was able to go with what she wanted one day, and it's like, oh my gosh, what kind of pressure and a burden is that to have to fit into a certain box? So that's again, Pastor, what falls under, among the many others, white privilege. I want to tell you a story, and I've told it here. I told it with Angel, and I've referenced it on some other shows too. But I want to mention it now because I know that there'll be people that are watching this either live or later that I want them to hear my perspective, because this to me was really the first time I thought, not the first time, but that made me think about white privilege, but I didn't quite understand it yet. And this was about a year and a half ago. And by the way, for anyone that is watching right now, feel free to jump in, comments, questions. We could take those. I love to share some of the messages if you just want to give Pastor AD3 a shout out. And I would also ask, if you get in those comments and you know someone that wants to watch this or that should watch this, I think everybody should, type their name in there and see if we can get them involved too. But
Yeah,
I was going to just tell you the very short version of it, which many people would say I'm not capable of doing that. But I was going to say that because, I've told this before, but I'm reminded all the time on TV that just because you told it once doesn't mean everybody heard it. So
right.
about a year and a half or so ago, I'm driving to Wichita. My son plays hockey, and he was going a day before me. I think my wife and our daughter had something else going on. I was announcing a hockey game for the Kansas City Mavericks here, so I was going to go a day late. And so I'm driving my truck to Wichita on a Saturday morning, and I passed the trooper on the side of the road about 45, 50 miles north of Wichita, I-35. You see that trooper in the center, and take a look at the speedometer. No, I think I'm only going 5 over. I'm good. I see him pull out, and you know how you remember these thought processes that happen in 2 seconds, and you feel like it was like 5 minutes worth of thought. And
Right.
so, I'm thinking, all right, he must be moving on to the next thing, or maybe he got somebody. I don't know. And he pulls behind me. I'm like, I don't think I was speeding. And now the lights go on. I'm like, I guess I was speeding. Heart beats a little bit, but okay, I mean, it's fine. So he pulls me over, and I'm ready. And I hear him come on the loudspeaker. Sir, please roll down your window, put the keys on top of the truck, and exit the vehicle.
Oh, wow.
Like, wait, for speeding? I didn't even think I was speeding, but now the heart's beating a little faster. So I get out. He says, keep your hands in the air. Oh, no, hold on, let me back up. I look in the rearview mirror after the announcement, and I see that he's drawing his gun on I-35. So I get out. By the way, I told the story on a baseball podcast I was on with Dave Sims, play-by-play announcer for the Seattle Mariners, only black television play-by-play guy in baseball. And his question afterwards was it daytime or nighttime, which was a very telling question. So I get out, tells me to put my hands up, walk in front of the truck, and then walk backwards to him. Don't trip in the ditch, blah, blah, blah. So now my heart's racing, because I'll be honest, I'm not a saint, but I've never been arrested in my life.
Yeah.
And Pastor, here's where my mind went the whole time. In that instant that you think, this must be a misunderstanding. This must be a misunderstanding. And so I backed up. I got to him. He put the cuffs on me, put me in the car. And after about 3-4 minutes of getting my license and looking at the registration, we came to figure out that someone had stolen a similar vehicle and swapped the plates.
Wow.
So I was driving my vehicle with the plates of a stolen vehicle. But my default mind went to, must be a misunderstanding. Yeah, I was a little shaken, but must be a misunderstanding. Never feared for my life. Never feared for getting in trouble. I just knew it was a misunderstanding. And I do remember pulling away afterwards thinking, boy, what would it have been like to be black? I remember having that thought. That is something that I will continue to tell people and something I've thought about over and over and over again, Pastor, because is that not right there the example of white privilege?
Sure. Absolutely. It's like I said, it's living with a different set of rules. It's having to constantly think in protective measures. It's having to constantly ask yourself, what am I doing threatening? What am I doing wrong? Imagine the psychological implications that mindset has on someone. That anytime you confront or are confronted by authority, police in this context, you're constantly asking yourself, what about me is threatening? How can what about me can I change so I can stay alive? Think about that, Joe. What can I change so I can survive this encounter? So that's the thought process come in. This must be a misunderstanding, may not enter into my mind. What enters into my mind is get home to my wife and kids. Get home to my wife and kids. What about me can I dial down to survive this? I mean, I've been pulled over several times and automatically hello, officer, how are you? Good day. God bless you. Amen. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's almost automatic. I want to de-escalate the situation when the police officer is supposed to be trained to do that. I'm the one that's like, hey, let me de-escalate this situation. Let me dial down a bit so I can survive and get home. And so, yeah, that's a great example.
It's one that, look, it's one story in my life. That's it. It's not 50 stories, everyday life stories. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it's one that I think and hope, because I remember when I was telling people, white friends about what happened, and the second you say they drew a gun, they're like, whoa. And, I knew it was a powerful story. I just didn't really know the context or how to put it in. And now it just, to me, I hope it adds just in the smallest of ways to this conversation from the other side. Because I understand what white privilege is now. And that doesn't mean I don't have a ton of work to do myself.
Right.
Because we all have work to do, by the way. I mean,
absolutely.
That's never going to change. Enough about me, but you said in your deal with Pastor Craig, and this was powerful to me because it's important, I think, for everyone to understand this and remember, there can be racism without racists. So explain that more, because we're not just talking about bad cops, which, by the way, there are plenty of good ones, but the institution and many other institutions there are a lot of issues.
Right.
Lifetime, generations, more than a lifetime. Explain there could be racism without racists.
Well, I found myself during all of this having fruitful conversations with a lot of my white brothers and sisters, whom I love dearly. And I'm trying to get them to understand, because there's this belief that since I'm not racist, I have nothing to do with what's going on. Like you said earlier, I have black friends. I enjoy black culture. I'm not afraid to drive on 71 through Kansas City, headed toward the plaza. You know, I'm not racist. Why are you? And these conversations oftentimes feel like attacks to them because they feel as if I'm saying they're racist because historically, racism has only been defined one way. Racism has only been defined as Confederate flag flying, KKK member having, racial slur using, white individual who yells out white power. And if that's not me, Joel, then I'm not racist.
Mhm.
But there is a such thing as racism without racism. That's what I said to Pastor Cackley. Because here's how. Because racism isn't just personal identity. It isn't just a personal expression. Racism can also be systemic and it can be structural. Racism can live in systems and it can live in structures. Okay. And so here's what I mean by that. We understand, especially from my theological perspective, my theological platform is I understand that the hearts of men are wicked, all men, right? The hearts of all men are wicked, and racism is a sin. Racism is sin. It is sin. God frowns upon it. God doesn't validate it. Racism is sin. But since racism, the sin, lives in the heart of a sinner, the sinner's inclination is to build a system that protects his or her own interests.
Hmm.
That's the point. Like look at it throughout history. Like anybody who's in power would want to build something that protects the power that they have. And so we've seen that throughout the history of America, throughout the history of the world, even in other kingdoms, in other countries in the world. You see these structures that support and protect the power. Okay. And so what I've tried to communicate to them is that if we're going to deal with the sin of racism, we also have to deal with the racism that lives in the structures that protects the people who hold the power. And so the thing that I said is that you're not racist because you're not racist. Your not being racist should manifest in being anti-racist, which means that I'm going to work against my here it is. Now here's the thing that gets people. I'm going to work against my own interests in order for there to be equality. Because if I'm going to destroy racism, I can't just be content with me saying I'm not racist. Or I can't be just content, Joel, with me saying I'm going to go make some more black friends. I have to say, hey, there's some systems and there are some structures that are benefiting me and aren't benefiting other people, or benefiting other people, or impacting other people negatively. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dismantle the racism in these systems and this is the hard thing, in order for there to actually be true equality. And so that's what I mean. And so that's what I'm calling for my white brothers and sisters to do, is to use every platform and every privilege that they have to aggressively attack racism in any form, whether it be within the hearts or whether it be within the structure. And so that's what I want us to understand. There's a such thing as systemic racism. You can even go back to this thing called redlining. I don't know if anybody has ever, they would literally put red boxes, red lines and red boxes around black communities as if to trigger and to flag other white people to stay away from them. So these black communities couldn't get mortgage loans. These black communities couldn't get business loans. They couldn't get financed because of this racist systemic structure called redlining. And so we've seen that throughout the history of America. It's nothing new, man. It's nothing new.
Yeah, I think the part that really scared me, I don't know if that's the right word. I mean, I keep talking about this kind of awakening, but I was watching the movie 13th.
Yes.
And I think I'd watched it when it came out, but I probably watched it like, unfortunately, I watch and read and do everything like while doing three other things at once because I have
Right.
no attention span, and that's
Like everybody else in the world.
I know it's not, but it's not good. That's just I don't care what your background is and what your race is or religion or gender. Like we all have attention problems. That's society nowadays. But I sat down and I watched it a few weeks ago. Undivided attention, and it almost felt suffocating. So I can only imagine what it's like to be a person of color to be living it, because what I took away in the suffocating part to me was like every time there have been gains, there have been countermeasures to take those gains away.
Right.
So you've seen that every step of the way. Oh, you could vote, but now we're going to make it harder for you to do this. Oh, you can do this,
Absolutely.
but we're going to make it harder for you to do that. So I've thought about that a
Not
lot
just
in the
not just make it harder. We're going to kill you if you
yeah,
vote.
yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
going to kill you if you vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and we're seeing it again right now. I mean, look at the lines at polls, and no coincidence of where it's happening. Like I've never understood, and I don't do politics. I mean, I do them privately because I've always, in my role, I've always understood that. Look, I want people to watch for Royals, so that's fine. But my my encouragement to everyone and my hope for everyone will be that everyone has a chance to vote. Like that's our right. And I think we should have voting on Saturdays where people don't have to determine whether they have to take off and lose a paycheck to exercise their right to vote. That's a whole other discussion. But it's very clear that people are being prevented from voting, or it's being made as difficult as possible. And then go out and vote who I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. Go vote for who you want, but have the ability to exercise that privilege. So when I think about 13th and the countermeasure to everything that has gone on, or even making it worse, and lives being threatened and all of that, and I see this movement going on right now. The question to me is, are we making progress? I had a friend on this show recently, a few weeks ago, Donald Hawkins, successful serial entrepreneur, African American, and he shared a conversation just a couple weeks ago that his young daughter said to him. They were watching a Sesame Street thing about race, and she said, "Dad, I thought Martin Luther King took care of this already in the past." And he said that. Wait a minute, where are we at right now? So I see progress, but then my head says, but is there progress? Where are we at right now?
Of course, the civil rights movement was huge progress. And oftentimes progress is incremental. But I think where we are right now, Joel, and you can see this around the country, I think where we are right now is if this next leg of progress is going to be made, white people are gonna have to make it. Right? If racism, if it was up to black people, racism would have been over a long time ago. Right? You know what I'm saying? So I think progress is being made. I really do think progress is being made, but I think there's a new wave that's here where it's black and it's white, and it's saying, hey, we're no longer together going to stand and tolerate this in individuals or in systems and structures, right? And so I want us to understand that hope is appropriate to have, Joe, but hope is a discipline. Hope is not automatically. You have to train your heart to hope. I'm going to say that again. You have to train your heart to hope, because you can look at all the negative things that are taking place and say nothing has happened. You can look at all the stuff that's happening in our nation and saying, hey, we're regressing, we're not progressing. Or you can look at it and say all of this unrest, all of these protests, all of this stuff is working to continue to move the needle forward so that we can have a better union, so that we can have a greater nation, so that we can have equality for all, liberty, so we can live up to what this thing was founded on, liberty and justice, finally, Joel, for who? All. All right. And so that's kind of what I teach people. Like, Hope is a discipline. You got to train your heart to hope. Like, you can look at it one way or you can look at it the other way. I choose to look at it as hopefully as I can and say that if this thing is going to move forward, if this thing is going to progress, then we all have to stand arm in arm, hand in hand, and fight again. It's not black people against racism. It's everybody against racism.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just need to be black people against racism. It needs to be everybody against racism. And I think that that's what we're seeing. And so if that's how we're going to measure progress, sure, I'm seeing progress, and we're going to continue to see progress because I think that progress is inevitable. I think the time is here and the time is now.
Yeah, because when some people say all lives matter, and that one I have understood every step of the way, going however many years back when people said all lives matter, and I was like, well, no one was saying that they didn't.
Right.
It was like, we already know all lives matter. Black lives matter too. Black lives matter equally. And so I would ask the people that are saying, if you're saying all lives matter, do you equally stand up to racism with your black brothers and sisters? I mean, that's it to me. Quite simply. I've got a ton more questions, but I'll jump in on some of the comments here, and sometimes they're just little shout outs there, and so it's good. And again, jump in. The beauty of this show, for better or worse, is I could do whatever I want. So
right, that's good.
You throw something in. I don't, it's my producers on TV are finally happy. We don't have to wrap him up and get him to a commercial. He's on his own. But this is a good question from Jennifer. As a staffing business owner, I have learned to watch out for employers who consistently ignore qualified candidates that either fit or don't fit a particular profile, and not only ending the partnership, but have difficult discussions around profiling. Having the conversation is important, but what resources, Pastor, might I use that would be even more helpful? Jennifer's looking, how do I take that next step? How do I continue to have these discussions?
Well, great question, Jennifer. You've got to continue to lean into those difficult conversations, and you've got to live as an example, right? You can't be afraid to speak. You can't be afraid to call out. You can't be afraid to ruffle feathers. And so you understand the importance of the conversation, but what resources might I use that would even be more helpful? I would say, continue to encourage diversity, right? Because if you're having conversations with the same kinds of people, you're only going to get the same kinds of results, right? And so I would say to encourage diversity in your circle, a diversity in your occupation or on your staff, so that you can get different points of views and different perspectives, and begin to shake things up that way. But in the meantime, continue to speak up, continue to speak out, continue to ruffle as many feathers as you can, and continue to call out as many things as you see, because as difficult as that may be, that causes change. That causes change. That you're not silent, right? Because oftentimes silence is violence.
So we all have that responsibility, and look, the social media thing, in my mind, it makes things worse, because how many people throw out these threats and actually do it with their name and then picture on it? It's always some fake person. Like, I've dealt with stuff my whole career as long as social media was around, but it's not racist, it's not sexist. Look, my female colleagues on television get 99% of the comments about appearance. I don't get any of that stuff, right? Like, and I get trolled. Quite frankly, you want to give me a hard time, I'll just mute you and keep sending it away, because I'm not going to see it, and you could waste your time that way. I tell my family all the time, if something on there is so personal that our safety is in danger, I want to know about it, but otherwise I don't. But I don't deal with the kind of stuff that my black friends are dealing with. I mean, I looked yesterday, and I know this is everyday life, but Mayor Lucas, who is a friend, tweets out a screenshot of texts he got from some guy that was all upset about wearing a mask.
Wearing a mask.
Like,
I saw that. That was heartbreaking.
We could have the mask discussion because I know I'm right on this. But look, I don't need to tell people what to do or what not to do, and the lawmakers can figure all that out. I'm wearing a mask when I go to the grocery store. I'm going to follow science on this one, but for this person to text anyone, including the mayor of a city, you should swing from a tree. I'm not threatening it, but would love to see it. Like, what the heck is going on?
You see that? That's racism. That's racism. That is, I'm going to be honest, Joel. A lot of the comments that I'm seeing about the masks are from white people. Yeah. A lot of the outrage that I'm seeing, I watched a town hall meeting the other day that was on social media. And I mean, this guy was letting these people have it, calling them traitors, and it was treason, and they're trying to control them. And it was this white guy who was going in on these council members because they had proposed that they mandate people to wear these masks in public. And so what I'm seeing, Joe, this goes back to our conversation about white privilege. What I'm seeing, my man, is that, I'm going to be honest with you, white people don't know how to deal with inconvenience. It's just the inconvenience of having to wear a mask. It feels like control. It feels like you're being oppressed. It feels like you're being abused. And that's not the case. But this inconvenience is bringing up all these feelings of superiority, these feelings, this reality of privilege, when really all we're saying is we're trying to protect people. We're trying to save lives. Please wear a mask if you're going to go in public, because COVID-19 is killing people and COVID-19 is real. We're not trying to control your life. We're not trying to abuse you or take away your right to be who God has called you to be or whatever. What we're saying is we're trying to protect lives. So please put this, it's a mask. Just wear it. Wear it. Now, why are you threatening to hang the mayor? Because the mayor is trying to protect bodies and lives. It's baffling to me, Joel. It's baffling.
Me too. It's funny. I was at two stores yesterday. I did learn something. You might appreciate this right now too. I wear glasses and contacts, usually contacts, and I was wearing glasses yesterday. Wearing a mask with glasses
is horrible.
I needed windshield wipers or something. It was terrible. I'm like, I'm never doing this again. But you know what? I wasn't taking the mask off, and I'm not looking for a fight, but I find myself like looking around, and I'm not going to judge people either. I'm not like if you choose not to wear a mask, now if you're breaking the law or it's the rule of that store, then I think you do have an obligation. I think you should. No one's putting this in there to control anyone. They're putting this in there to keep us safe. No different than a seatbelt. We've heard that many times before. And so, look, I want everybody to be safe so we can get through this. This virus, by the way, does something that a lot of us don't do. It doesn't discriminate.
Yep.
It doesn't see white or black or young or old. It might go after older a little bit more, but we're seeing young too. I mean, we don't need to have this discussion because, well, maybe we do, but it's not why I had you on. And although it's a good point that you made about the control aspect of it, I found myself looking around at both stores yesterday, saying like, who wants to give me a hard time? Where's the Karen out there? Because I'm ready to videotape it. I was not looking for a fight. Look, I'd rather stay out of.
Right.
I already have some spotlight. You know what I mean? But I'm on edge. And so I certainly understand that's a feeling that so many black men and women and children have had for much of their life at a totally different level. I mean, I was thinking, you talked about this before. I was thinking about this before we came on. My wife and I went out for a walk. Sometimes every now and then I got to try to get a little bit of exercise, and we took a 2.5 mile walk, which is probably not the smartest thing to do on a day that feels like it's 100 degrees outside, but we did. Do you think once I thought about my safety or how I was going to be looked at? Never once. I don't have to think about that kind of thing. So I have a few questions, just perspective-wise, and we'll hit both ends of this. To all of the members of your church, and I've got the website up there.
Mm-hmm.
What are you hearing from them? Because look, we got two viruses going on right now, right? I heard it put, we've got the physical virus and we've got the virus of the mind, which has been going on for, hundreds of years. They're both on the forefront right now.
Right.
What are you hearing? What are you telling your members?
Well, what I'm hearing, there's this sense of solidarity in our congregation that's been extremely encouraging and inspiring. Shout out to City of Truth Church. Anybody who goes to the city that's watching, your pastor loves you, and I miss you. But there's this sense of solidarity that we're all on the same page for the most part when it comes to racial injustice. And so what I'm hearing is extremely encouraging to me. I'm hearing a lot of hope. I'm hearing a lot of plans for action. I'm hearing a lot of people who were politically apathetic or neutral or politically disengaged as far as when it came to voting and understanding the importance of how their vote counts and getting the right people in the right places so that different agendas can be pushed forward that benefit marginalized and poor people. So I'm seeing people get more motivated to those ends, which is encouraging. I'm seeing people more motivated. Watch this, Joel. I'm seeing people more motivated to deal with the issues in their world, in their sphere of influence, right? That's something that that I think has been missing for a while. I think a lot of people love to attach on these big movements, which are great. These big movements say, hey, right, let's go, let's change it. But then when they go home, though, their attention isn't on the things that they can change in their immediate proximity. So what I'm seeing in our congregation is that people are focusing more on their proximity, their vicinity. They're focusing more on the things that are within their control, such as their children. I'm seeing mothers and fathers have conversations with their kids, hard ones, nonetheless, but they're having these conversations with their children. I'm seeing people confront issues that have been taking place on their jobs with courage now, and I'm seeing that, and so I've really been encouraged by that because not only do we want change at a national level, we also want change at a local level. We also want change in the home. And so I'm seeing fathers being more fatherly. I'm seeing mothers being more motherly. And so that's always encouraging to me. And so I'm also preaching in this time to our congregation that, yes, this fight is necessary. Yes, this fight is right. Yes, this fight is true. But ultimately, you have the responsibility to deal with the fight in your own heart. And so I'm encouraged by seeing people take responsibility. I'm encouraged by seeing people grab a hold of the bull's horns and the reins in their own life and using their platforms to begin to speak truth to power, which has been encouraging to me, Joel. And so that's kind of what I'm seeing. Did I answer your question? I felt like I was.
Yeah. No, you did.
Okay, good.
You did.
Good.
I think so often these discussions, especially when you have one white guy, one black guy, is that it can often be my perspective, your perspective, which is good.
Right.
But we need to, I could sit there and talk about what I'm feeling and what I've learned. And my hope and goal is that my white friends might see a little bit of what I'm seeing. Maybe they already have. It doesn't necessarily have to come from me. But I'm just trying to open people's eyes in the way that you opened my eyes and others have opened my eyes. Trevor Noah, around when you did your thing, he's done many, did apps. I'll watch it again. I actually have not had the time to watch it with my kids, or they haven't had the time to watch it with me. I got teenagers. But, he had about 25 minutes that was like, whoa. And, your dear white people think. So I want to be able to see things from my end, but I also want to hear what's going on in your congregation because, it's one thing to talk about. I want to know what the feeling is. I want to know what what the steps are going forward. And so I'll flip it back to the other side. I know you've heard this from your white friends, or I'm assuming that you have. We just met each other, but I'm sure a lot of people like me are saying, what can we do? And I've heard a lot of different takes on this. I've heard some black folks say, well, where were you before? We don't need your help now. I understand that. I from my end, sit there and say, look, what, are we just going to come in there and make everything go away and everything's going to be better, like push a magic button? No. But what I told you before we came on is if there's room on the bus, there are a lot of us that want to hop on, and help in any way that we can. That doesn't make up for the past. It may or may not be the solution. I don't know. But I'll ask you that simple question. What can those of us that are white do to help this cause?
Well, I think, first of all, great question. Second of all, I think things like this, Joe, like just using your platform for the benefit of others, for the benefit of the cause of others, leaning into the pain of other people. Joe, like you're doing now, striving to understand, not not leaning to your own understanding, not drawing your own conclusions, not shunning it. Like, let's say, for instance, the Black Lives Matter thing, not shunning it because of a couple things in the small print of a movement that most black people aren't even aware of, right? I'm just standing behind the statement, Black Lives Matter. So I say all that to say, Joel, just using your platform to speak. Don't be silent. Don't be complicit. Don't settle in knowing what needs to be done and not doing it. So I think that's what we're seeing from a lot of white people, man. We're seeing people actually speak up, and it seems strange. It seems kind of uncomfortable. It seems kind of like, wow, is this really happening? And so I think the main thing you can do is to become an ally, right? I'm reminded of the story of the Good Samaritan, and it's in Scripture. And the story paraphrase, I'll give you the Stevenson, the AD3 version. This guy got beat up, and he's just laying on the side of the road, beat up, bloody, half, almost dead. And so priest walks past him, somebody else walks past him, and then a Samaritan walks past him. And the Samaritan sees his condition, leans into his condition, carries him to an inn to get cared for and pays for it. And so I say all that to say is that leaning in, touching, understanding, asking questions, and then using your resources for the benefit of the movement and the benefit of others is what's going to move this thing through. So I would think that would be my answer, man. Number one, it would be to speak. Number two, it would be to lean in. Number three, it would be to use your resources, right? And so, yeah, I think that's where we are, and I think that's what we're seeing, and I think that's what's going to help move this thing forward, and even at an even quicker rate. Joe, great question.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I get sucked into that rabbit hole of reading comments on social media, not to my stuff, but just, and I don't like it's sort of like it's a double-edged sword because I don't want to waste my time seeing all that garbage, but I also think it's a reminder that it's out there. Like,
it's kind of like a car accident. You're like,
yeah. You want to.
It's like you don't want to see it, but it's like I just gotta see what people are saying.
But Pastor, then what happens is, like, if it's something local, I'll look, and like I'm not saying this, hey, look at me. I got like 87,000 people that follow me on Twitter. I know why they do. They follow me because of the success of the Royals. I was there on every trip, every game through, 2 pennants and a world championship. I get it. But I'll look and see some of those comments, and a lot of times it's someone that follows me. I'm like, I don't know you, but we're in the same world, and it's it exists. I think about this a lot. I grew up, like I said, middle class. Son of Jewish parents, and I didn't deal with a lot of anti-Semitism, I know my dad did, my uncle did, I think my mom probably did, but you'd hear about that stuff. But we were pretty protected, and now I see some of that coming back,
Mm.
and I really believe it's come back in part because the divisiveness and the hate, in part I believe because it was underground. It was probably there, and now they've been fueled. They were there all along, but they're becoming emboldened to come out. And it's easy to do when you got that Twitter egg without a picture and a name to it, because you could take these pot shots. And so I want to frame that in a way of, like, I don't know if there's more anti-Semitism today than there was when I grew up, or it's just more evident. In the same way that I don't think that there is more brutality, there's just more cameras to catch it. So that is the question, and I gave you my perspective from the anti-Semitism standpoint of feeling like I'm seeing more of that pop up, and it's scary to me because I never worried about that as a kid, at least where I grew up. But is there more racism today? I know you don't. You may not know the answer. I'm not. I mean, I don't know how you
Yeah,
measure it, but like,
yeah.
is
No,
there
but I get
more,
what
or
you're saying.
are we exposing it more? I don't know.
I think it's being emboldened, and you use that word. It's being emboldened, and I'm going to say this, and it is what it is. I think a lot of the emboldenment that's coming, and a lot of the people who are coming out of woodworks and feeling more alive and emboldened to say, it's coming from the top of political power. And I'll just leave it at that. It's coming from the top of political power. Vote how you want, see what you want, conservative, liberal, whatever. I'm not here to sway anybody's vote. I'm here to tell the truth. And so we're seeing this thing being emboldened because it's being promoted and it's being pushed from the top. Sometimes very subtly, dog whistle-ish, to where you're hearing these trigger words, these words, law and order, law and order. You're seeing things like that, and you're hearing things like that, and I think that it's being emboldened. And so, like you said, man, cameras are capturing it through the invention of social media. You're seeing it more from different pockets of the United States, and it's all coming right to a head on your laptop, on your phone, wherever you are. And so you're seeing it. It never went away. It never went away. Like I said earlier, it's always been present in systems and structures. But now the racist people who feel their way of life, who feel their power being taken away from them, who feel their platforms being removed from them, who fear the inferiority, who fear being less important, are now clawing at their last chance to lash out, and their last chance to be heard and to protect their power. And so this is what we're seeing. We're seeing people being more bold than ever, albeit behind Easter eggs and waterfalls on social media, but they are being emboldened to say what it is that they've always said in the privacy of their own homes.
Yeah.
And so and so I don't want to let that deter me, right? I don't want to let that back me up. As a matter of fact, I want to lean into that and say whatever we're doing is working, because this is a last ditch effort, a last chance effort to claw and to protect the power structure that is being dismantled right before our very eyes. And so I'm hopeful at that. I appreciate that. And yeah, and so that's my answer. It never went away, Joe. Racism has always been here, alive and well and kicking.
Yeah, no, and I think I knew that. It just was like, is it worth? I hadn't thought about it the way you just said it. It's like a last stand, right? It's like a last stand to try to protect what hopefully is being torn down. And so that's the acting out. I mean, we saw it in St. Louis on Sunday with that disgusting. I know exactly where that area is. One of the true shaping times of my life was working in St. Louis. I didn't grow up there. Sometimes I like to tell people that because it seems to matter in Kansas City, Kansas City, St. Louis. But one of the beauties of working in news for 6 years before moving over to regional sports there was that I could, on any given day, go into the high school of a suburban white neighborhood with $1 million homes, and on the next day be sitting in the house of, say, Darius Miles before he got drafted to go into the NBA in East St.
Right.
Louis, or go through metal detectors in the inner city in a school, and then go to a school with total wealth. And so, like when Ferguson went down, I actually felt like I had a greater understanding of it because I've been in that neighborhood. I've hung out with those people. I've been in those schools and in those stores. And what I always understood without understanding white privilege was that people are people. Like, you hear, well, I wouldn't go into that neighborhood. Well, I wouldn't go into. Well, look, there are plenty of dangerous places at certain times where maybe you shouldn't go, and that's not always a race thing either. But there's like I you talk about driving down I-70, but driving down Highway 71. I mean that we know what that dividing line can look like, but people are people.
Yeah, and you have to, and I think people now, you have to ask yourself the question: why is this neighborhood this way? Why is it this way? Why is the hood the hood? Why is the suburbs the suburbs? It's not. Because too many times we look at these neighborhoods and you blame the people without looking at the system that has been oppressing the people, right? The hood is the hood because of lack of resources. The hood is the hood because of something called white flight. The hood is the hood because of redlining. So there's a reason why these neighborhoods are the way they are. There's a reason. So we have to stop looking. Here's the thing, and this is what I'll say. We have to stop being so caught up on the content that we forsake there's a context. There's a reason why this is the way it is. And if we keep trying to speak to the content without addressing the context, we'll never get to a real solution. So I think what we're seeing now, Joel, is we're seeing people who are inquisitive, who are inquiring about now the context. It's like, now, you know what? I don't just want to look at the content, the people. I want to get to the bottom line as to why this is the way it is. Why is the school system the way it is? Why are the neighborhoods the way it is? Why is this particular part of the city policed more than this particular part of the city? Why? I grew up in the suburbs. Right, my parents, my wife grew up in the hood, so she gave me my street cred. You feel me? Like my wife's straight from the hood, 24th Street, Hilltop. So she gave me my street cred. But our parents moved us to a suburb called Raytown when I was in elementary school. Then from Raytown, we moved to Lee Summit. I graduated from Lee Summit High School. But I always was in the hood because all my family members lived in the hood. And so I saw, as soon as we crossed a certain part of the city, it was just totally different. It was like, wow, this is a whole new world. Why is it like that? Yeah. There's a reason as to why, and it's systemic and structural racism.
That's it right there. That's it. And I could ask you 5 more hours worth of questions. I knew I'd hit an hour. That was a given because, one, I want to talk about it.
Right. And I appreciate you.
Well, two, thank you. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that these times, and even this pandemic, by the way, the pandemic is causing a lot of misery for a lot of people, not to mention the loss of lives. I'm a glass half full optimist type of person, so I'm trying to see the good of this pandemic, and one of them is that it's given me the opportunity to meet people like you, because I'm not saying that I would have been less moved if baseball season was going on. I'm saying that it would not have been able to take every minute of my attention, because you still have to go to work and talk about a game. You still have, you know what I mean? And right. So now I have this freedom to sit here and say, you know what, let's do this. And by the way, let's not look, we're not a very good society at walking and chewing gum at the same time. We're not. Right. We forgot about the pandemic for a bit when everything with the murder of George Floyd and everything else happened. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have been out on the streets. I've actually thought a lot about, if you've had a whole lifetime of dealing with racial injustice and you finally have this opportunity to come together with your white friends and with your community and protest, that might be worth more than your health. This might finally be the moment. I think you can do it with masks on, but I encourage people to get out there and do that. But I have seen this pandemic as an opportunity to hopefully come together and address this. And we need to make sure, I say this on my end, but everyone's end, to not let this get swept under because the next thing comes along.
Right.
Because there's always the next thing. That's the news cycle. That's the world we live in with social media. So I'm saying that to you to say that I saw your Dear White People series, and you're a talker, which you should be as a preacher, by the way.
Right.
And as a Jewish guy, you can motivate me too. You have motivated me. So it goes beyond religion, but I understand the importance and the foundation of religion and Jesus in your life. If Jesus isn't in my life, it doesn't mean that I don't have belief and faith, if that makes sense. But you've motivated me. You motivated me just by watching that. So I thank Kiana Sinks for that. I do need to, and so I knew this was going to go long because I'm as much of a talker as you. And so that was going to be inevitable. I think my wife, because, like I told you, I've shown her the whole thing, and she's like, oh man, you guys are going to do some talking today. And I'm grateful for that. We have a mutual friend I found out this morning that texted me, said, I heard you having my guy on. And that would be my good friend, Pastor Stephen Graves, who said that you guys went to college together. So Steve, who's one of my favorite people, and we met one day. I was over at Price Chopper, and he and his firefighters walked in, and he had somebody working there come up and ask if I was who I was, and we started talking, and then we hit it off, and we've been friends for a number of years. He says about you, Pastor AD3, he's a great dude, and you'll like him a lot. I'm a renegade, and he's holy. I shoot and he prays. And I love that guy.
He's hilarious.
He's a good dude. He's a funny dude. He's got a huge heart, great family, and he's got a mini me coming along the way too. His son is like the next version of him too. But I'll wrap it up with this. I'll say one, thank you for your perspective, for your passion. And I really believe that it is people of influence like yourself, white, black, whoever it is, that are going to help make this change. And let's be honest, it's going to be your kids. They're the next generation coming. That's my last question. What are you telling your kids? You had the answer on the Dear White People series about going into Target with your daughter and how hard it was to find a doll that looked like her when anyone that's white could easily find that. So, your kids have been exposed to this from the day that they were born, just like any black kid. What are you telling your kids?
First of all, I'm telling my children that I love them, that they matter, that they're valuable to me, they're valuable to God, that they're worthy of dignity, they're worthy of love, and they're worthy of respect. I'm affirming that within them. Secondly, I'm telling them that everybody deserves the same treatment. That not only are they loved, not only do they deserve dignity, not only do they deserve honor and respect, but everyone they come in contact with, black, white, Asian, whatever, deserves the exact same thing, being created in the image of God. I'm telling my kids to love others as Christ has loved them, number one. Number two, I'm telling them to always be hopeful. Never let the evils of the world steal the hope from their heart. To always be hopeful. To always be hopeful. That is not a weak perspective. That is not a weak disposition or position, but that is a strong disposition and position. That is a strong perspective, to be hopeful. It takes strength to find hope in the midst of darkness. And so I'm telling them that. The third thing I'm telling them is to always speak for the least and the lost and the left out. To always speak to the least and the lost, to speak for the least and the lost and the left out. All right. And those are the three things that I'm kind of reiterating in my home, Joel. I'm trying to raise world changers, not people who sit by the sidelines and watch things take place, but people who get their hands dirty and get in there and start making some changes for other people.
Yeah, and they will. They're going to follow their parents and follow that lead, and they're going to make a difference as I know that you are at the City Church, citykc.com. Pastor AD3. I know we're just meeting each other, but I look forward when the time is safe and right to be able to do that in person. I'm going to show up. I don't care if I'm the only white guy there. I'll be the only Jewish guy, I'm sure. But I would love one day
You're
when
not. You
baseball
won't
season is
be.
over.
You won't be the only white guy there. You might be the only Jewish guy there.
Probably. Regardless, I'm coming. I think and hope that by the end of July I'll be working every Sunday for baseball until the end of September, and then I hope that when things are safe, if you're willing to have me in as a guest, that I could show up on a Sunday and experience a Pastor AD3 sermon. I would love that.
I'd love it too, my brother.
This is great, and hey, let's keep this conversation going offline and see if there are ways to just keep making things better. You're going to do that either way, and I'd love to be a very small part of it. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. Oh, wait, hold on. There he is. There's our guy.
What up, Steve?
Yeah, he's the man. All right. Hey, hang tight for 1 sec. I'm going to wrap up the show, but we spent an hour and 10. Like I said, we could do another lifetime's worth, but it's a nice start, at least in terms of being able to have this conversation with you. Super, super grateful for your time, your perspective, and everything you're doing and have done for, I know, many years and will continue to do. You're just new to my world, and I'm glad that that's the case. So appreciate it, Pastor.
Thank you so much.
All right. Phenomenal conversation. And I knew it would be without even knowing the man, but I have one ask of everyone, and that's it. And that is just to share this, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is, just share it. Share it with your friends. Share it with everyone. Share it with your white friends, your black friends, whoever it is. And let's see if we can continue to have these discussions and not stop doing them. So this was Triple Header Tuesday. Had John Rulin this morning, Pastor AD3 now, Nicky Lopez, second baseman for the Kansas City Royals, coming up at 2. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again to my sponsors, JJ's Wine and Spirits, Casey Cattle Company, and Enterprise Bank and Trust, #no stopping you. Hope you continue to have a good Tuesday, and thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Thanks, everyone.